Hello everyone, welcome back to the PM Computing channel. So what I have for you today is a AI tutorial. Today we are going to create a group of guys guarding this entrance to the harbor. And if the guys that are guarding this entrance become aware of the player's presence, it's going to trigger an event that's going to cause a jeep with some reinforcements to drive up from behind the player and essentially ambush the player from behind. So with that, let's go ahead and get started on this. First of all, of course, I'm going to go to Entity and add in some grunts. So go ahead and make sure that the follow terrain is selected. So we'll add 1, 2, 3. And we'll go ahead and use him to make the flow graph for this part. So we'll go ahead and select Create, New, and we'll call this AI Reinforce 1. Obviously, you can name this whatever you want, just for testing purposes. We'll go ahead and call it this for now. And the first thing you want to do is go ahead and give all three of these guys an inventory. So we're going to go to Add Node, Inventory, Add Equipment Pack. We'll go ahead and choose one real quick. We'll give them an Asian Assault. And copy this twice. And there we have it. So we'll go ahead and add these one at a time. We'll assign him, and assign him. And we'll assign these when the game starts. So we'll go to Mix Start and drag out to trigger for each one of these. So when the game starts, these guys will all have weapons. And the next thing that we want to do is add them to a group. So I'm just going to create an arbitrary group name. If you look in the entity properties under entity params, under entity properties 2, you'll see a group ID. You can change this to whatever you want. In this case, I'm just going to create it to a group that I know is unique. So I'm going to call it 2323. I'll add him to 2323 and him as well. So now that these guys are part of a group, there's some cool stuff we can do. So if you come in here, we can go to add an AI node, and we're going to add a group alertness node, which is right here. AI group alertness. And what this says is we can go ahead and assign a group name. So I'll just add the group 2323 now. This says when group 2323 as a group has an alertness value of green, orange, or red, you can trigger an action for that. So say that what we're going to use this for is when the alertness level goes to red, which basically means that the enemies are fully aware of the player's presence. And once that is the case, we can go ahead and trigger an action. So we'll come back to that in just a minute and leave that here. So what we're going to do is go down the road, and we're going to set up our vehicle real quick and the guys in the vehicle. So we're going to go over here. We're going to go add entity, vehicles, and we're going to look for an Asian LTV. And there it is right there. So there's our LTV. And we're going to add some grunts. So AI grunt. Add one there. Whoops. One there. One there. And one there. So we're going to go ahead and create a flow graph on the vehicle now. So we're going to flow graph create, new, and we'll call it enter Asian, LTV. So now what we need to do is tell these guys to enter into this vehicle. So to do that, we're going to go add a vehicle node and enter. So vehicle enter. And we need 4 of these because we have 4 guys. Control V. Control V, and Control V. And I'll go ahead and assign them real quick. So we're going to start with him, right click assign, him, right click assign, right click assign, and right click assign him as well. Okay, so we have the nodes assigned. So each one of these is a vehicle enter node, which tells that entity to enter a vehicle. Now, one important thing to note here is, unless you're doing something really specific, like maybe a cutscene or something, the fast should always be set to 1, because if you don't have that set, the guys probably aren't going to enter the vehicle correctly. So I'm going to check that in. Basically, fast means they'll just pop in the vehicle instead of running some kind of an animation to open the door and get inside the vehicle. Okay, so now that's done, and we need to trigger this at game start. And we're not quite done yet, so we know we're going to trigger this when the game starts, but these guys still don't know which vehicle to enter, and we still haven't assigned seats yet. You don't necessarily have to assign seats. It usually works when it's set to any, but I want to be a little more specific here. So at least grunts 47 and 48, I want him to be the driver, so you can click this down arrow and select driver, and I want him to be the gunner. So I'm going to select seat gunner for him. And the other two can sit anywhere, so we have the seat set to any, which should be fine. So they still don't know what vehicle to be in, so we're going to go to add node, entity, entity ID. And the entity ID node's a pretty generic node that just basically you assign an entity to it, and it just uses that name to assign a value to some other node. So we'll select a vehicle, select it to this entity ID node, and we'll say, okay, so the ID of the vehicle is the vehicle ID for each one of these entry nodes. Now the guys will know which vehicle to actually get into. Okay, so we could actually test this real quick, but if we go to game, enable physics and AI, we should see them enter the vehicle right away. And sure enough, that works. So you can see they all got into seats, and the gunner's up there now. And we're good to go. Okay, so the next thing that we need to do is actually trigger this when these guys over here are aware of the player's presence. So we're over here. I'm going to go back to this flow graph real quick. Now we already have it set to when their alertness goes to red, we're going to trigger an event. So what we're going to do is say, we're going to add node. Actually, we're going to use AI follow path speed stance. If I can find it. There it is, follow path speed stance. So when these guys are aware of the player, and basically they're fully aware of the player, and their alertness level goes to red, it's going to trigger this action. So it's going to trigger our vehicle over here. We're going to assign it to this follow path speed stance node. We're going to give it a run level of 3, sorry. And that means it'll drive really fast. We'll go and give it a combat alerted. Next thing we need to give it is a path name. So you see path name equals. We haven't created a path for it to follow yet, so we're going to do that now. So we're going to come to AI path. And with follow terrain selected, we're going to draw out our path. You can see our hands in the way there. Usually that doesn't happen until you run the physics AI. When you do that, weird things like that tend to happen. None of that stuff that happens actually in the game, obviously. It's just in the editor. Okay. You can see I'm just following the road here. And I think we're going to just kind of take it over here and drive him in towards the entrance right there. If you look up here, by the way, so in this, at least in this version of CryEngine, I don't think I've seen it in other versions, but in this version specifically, when you draw out an AI path, for some reason it sets it as a road by default. You have to uncheck that or it won't work. Okay, so far so good. So just taking a look at our flow graph, we need to take this path name here and add it to our follow path speed stance so that it knows which path it's supposed to be following. So we can add that right there. Control C, Control B. We'll tell it to start nearest. So it starts at the nearest point of the path to it. And that should be good, actually. Now, the next thing we want to do is basically say that once the vehicle has successfully followed that path, we want all the guys inside of it to get out and start shooting at the player, essentially. So to do that, we're going to add another node. We're going to add a vehicle, unload. And we need to assign the actual vehicle to this. So we got our LTV selected. We're going to assign it. And we're going to say when it's done following the path, sync. And we can basically say we can unload all except, what we're going to do in our case is all except the gunner. We want the gunner to still be up there inside the vehicle. We want everyone else to get out. So we're going to go ahead and select it like that. And that should do it. So basically what this says is once these guys are aware of the player's presence, it's going to trigger this vehicle to follow this path. Once it's at the end of the path, it's going to unload all but the gunner, and all the guys should shoot. Oh, and there is one other thing that I haven't done here. Let me go ahead and I'll go ahead and add it here. Give me 1 second. I need to add an inventory for these guys as well. Okay, so I'm going to add Asian Assault like we did for the other ones. I'm going to copy this 4 times. I'll assign our guys to them. I have allergies, sorry, so bear with me here. I have allergies and it's really early in the morning, so kind of a double whammy. Okay, so we'll go ahead and drag this here, drag that here, here, and here. Okay, so all those guys should have weapons now, so once they reach the end of that path, they should be able to attack. By the way, I don't know if you saw how I accidentally dragged that menu over here. You can actually move these tabs around. So say like I accidentally drug all these windows into this roll-up bar, I can drag them back over here. There's one. There's the other one. So now I have my tabs back in this window. Just something you might run into because they made it really easy to accidentally drag tools from one window to another. Okay. At this point, we should be all set, so let's go ahead and test this real quick. We'll go ahead and spawn in the game right here with Control G, and let's see what happens. Okay, now they're aware of my presence fully, and we should be seeing a vehicle pretty soon. gunner. And you see everybody but the gunner got out. So you can see you can script out a pretty awesome firefight just by using little tricks like that. So yeah, that works. So we'll go ahead and call that the end of this video. I'll have plenty more coming, so I'll show you how to do a lot more cool stuff in the CryEngine editor. Thank you very much for hanging with me and sticking with the channel. I know I'm kind of starting out here, not really professional yet, but my content will get a lot better as time goes on. So thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.